Teacher enforced the no late work accepted rule, so I refused her own late feedback by the same logic. My high school teacher has a strict no late work accepted rule. 0 exceptions, 0 mercy. So I decided to hold her to the exact same standard, and now I think I've started an academic war that I wasn't fully prepared for. I'm a 17-year-old senior, and my AP English teacher, let's call her Miss Thompson, is notorious for her hardline stance on deadlines. I mean, she prides herself on it. Turn something in 1 minute after midnight? Too bad. It's a 0. Printer ran out of ink the morning an essay is due? Should planned ahead? 0. Family emergency and you couldn't study for a quiz? Take the 0 and learn from it. She even bragged once that in 10 years of teaching, she has never accepted a single late assignment. It's the kind of policy you might expect in a corporate job, not high school. A few parents have even tried to complain about her no late work rule in the past, but she defends it as preparing us for college, and the school hasn't stopped her. Like it or not, her class, her rules. And hey, truth be told, her past students do score well on the AP exam. Maybe fear is a motivator? I guess the school figures her strict methods work, so they let it ride. Anyway, she's the teacher. All year I've been extremely careful about deadlines in her class, borderline paranoid. Once, earlier this semester, I came down with a nasty flu and was delirious with fever the night an essay was due. I still dragged myself to my computer to submit it by 11:59 p.m., terrified that if I missed the deadline, I'd tank my grade. Sure enough, one girl who was out sick that same week missed the deadline, and Miss Thompson wouldn't let her make it up, even with a doctor's note. I've basically organized my entire senior year schedule around avoiding Miss Thompson's wrath. I saw what happened to other classmates who slipped up, and it wasn't pretty. Which makes what I did next feel totally out of character, but I just snapped. Here's what happened. We had a major research paper assignment this semester, kind of like a senior thesis for English class. It's huge, counts for a big chunk of our grade. Part of the process was to turn in a detailed outline and draft by a certain date. Miss Thompson was supposed to review them, give feedback, and hand them back to us before we submitted the final paper. The outline was due 3 weeks ago, and the final paper was due today. I busted my butt on that outline and draft. We all did. It was 10 pages long, and I spent countless evenings perfecting it because I knew that without feedback, I'd be shooting in the dark for the final. According to her own timeline, Ms. Thompson was supposed to return our drafts with comments 1 full week before the final due date, giving us time to revise. Well, that week came and went. Every day I politely, and then anxiously, asked if she'd finished grading our drafts. She kept saying things like, "I'm still working on them. You'll have them soon." Meanwhile, the final deadline was drawing closer. Soon turned into the day before the final paper was due, and still no feedback. At this point, my classmates and I were in a panic. We started bombarding our class group chat about what to do. Has anyone gotten their draft back yet? Nope, nothing. This is insane. How are we supposed to turn in a good final without knowing if we're on the right track? A couple of my friends in class actually started over completely on their papers out of fear that their drafts were off track. I considered doing the same, but without any guidance. It felt like blindly throwing darts. We even briefly toyed with the idea of asking an English teacher from another class to glance at our drafts, but there wasn't enough time. So here we are, last night, less than 24 hours before the due date, and we finally get an email from Ms. Thompson at like 8 p.m. In the email, sent to the whole class, she apologized for the delay and attached a single PDF file, a scanned packet of general feedback for the class instead of individual notes. In it, she listed common mistakes and general suggestions, basically a generic list of what to fix. It was better than nothing, I guess, but it wasn't personal feedback on our specific drafts. And crucially, it arrived 4 days later than she promised. I was livid, like more upset than I'd ever been in a school setting. I'd given this teacher a pass on so many things because, well, she holds our grades in her iron fist. But the irony was just too much. Here she was, Ms. Deadlines Matter, blowing her own deadline and potentially screwing us all over. And an 8 p.m. email the night before is basically useless. Most of us had already finished our finals or were scrambling to wrap them up. I vented to my mom about it. She's used to my academic rants. And she said, "If it bothers you so much, do something about it. Hold her accountable." Honestly, I don't think she meant it in the dramatic way I took it, but that's what planted the seed. So I decided I was going to take a stand, even if it was a tad petty. I drafted an email back to Ms. Thompson, CCing the principal, and our guidance counselor, who oversees academic issues for seniors. In the email, I was very polite but pointed. I wrote something like, "Thank you for the general feedback. However, I noticed it was delivered after the originally stated deadline for returning our drafts. Because we were told no late work would be accepted from students, I assumed the same standards apply to the feedback promised by faculty. Unfortunately, receiving feedback at 8 p.m. the night before the final paper is due does not allow us to incorporate any of it. Therefore, I have decided to submit my final paper without incorporating the late feedback. I will be happy to consider any feedback that was delivered on time. Okay, I'll admit, I was being a bit of a smartass. My heart was pounding as I hit send because it's not every day I challenge a teacher, let alone CC the principal. But I felt righteous. If she could dish it, she should take it, right? I didn't get an immediate reply that night. I went to bed still angry, but also a little exhilarated that I stood up for myself, and indirectly for my classmates. This morning, I showed up to class having already submitted my final paper before the deadline, pointedly not incorporating her last-minute generic feedback out of principle. The tension in the classroom was palpable from the moment I walked in. Miss Thompson was at her desk, and when I walked through the door, her eyes immediately flicked to me. If looks could kill, I'd be ashes. Clearly, she had seen my email. Some of my classmates were giving me subtle looks of either admiration or, "You're crazy." We all took our seats and braced for something. Sure enough, at the start of class, she addresses us in this cold, measured tone. "I am disappointed with the lack of patience some of you showed regarding the feedback timeline," she said, eyes laser-focused on me. "In the future, I expect the same level of professionalism from students that is expected of teachers." I could feel all eyes turned to me. I didn't even try to look innocent. I just stared right back at her, my jaw clenched. If she wanted to call me out without naming me, fine. Two can play that game. I raised my hand and, without waiting to be called on, said, "I'm also disappointed with the lack of adherence to stated deadlines by the instructor. In the future, I expect the same level of punctuality from teachers that is demanded of students." Maybe I could have been more tactful, but I wasn't about to sit there and be scolded for something I felt she caused. The class collectively sucked in a breath. One kid mumbled, "Oh snap," under his breath. Ms. Thompson went stiff as a board, and her face turned a splotchy red. "Excuse me," she said in that dangerous low voice. I could practically hear my heartbeat in my ears, but adrenaline kept me speaking. If I turned my paper in 4 days late, I'd get a 0. We all would. But our feedback was 4 days late, and somehow that's okay? We had to work without it. I understand you're busy, but it's a double standard, and it affected our work. For a moment, I thought she might actually explode. She slammed the stack of, now pointless, draft printouts on her desk and snapped, "See me after class." Her voice was ice. "The rest of you, take out your textbooks." And that was that. The silent stares from everyone were painful. I could barely focus the next 40 minutes, as we went over some literature analysis that no one was paying attention to in that moment. I kept stealing glances at my friends. A couple gave me subtle thumbs-ups or yikes faces. When the bell rang, I was ready to bolt. Who wouldn't be, after basically declaring war on your teacher in front of everyone? But Miss Thompson fixed me with a look and said, "Not you, my name." I stayed behind as the rest of the class filed out in awkward silence. One of my friends whispered, "Good luck," to me on her way out. I stood there by Miss Thompson's desk, heart pounding, trying to look more confident than I felt. She immediately laid into me. She said I was being extremely disrespectful, that CCing the principal was a juvenile move, and that I should have come to her privately if I had an issue. I countered that a private conversation wouldn't have changed the fact that her feedback came after the due date, and all of us were impacted, not just me, which is why the principal was looped in. That made her even angrier. She accused me of undermining her authority and humiliating her in front of the class and the administration. I responded, "I'm sorry, but how is holding you to the same standard you set for us humiliating? If that policy makes you look bad, maybe it shouldn't be a one-way street." In hindsight, pouring salt in the wound probably wasn't wise. She was practically shaking with anger. She told me I was on very thin ice. She said, "If you want to play games with me, you will not win. I don't know what you expected to accomplish, but it certainly won't be a change in policy. What will change is your grade. I expect your final paper to incorporate the feedback given, and if it doesn't, your grade will reflect that." That was basically a threat to fail me or severely mark me down. I felt a flash of panic, thinking about that scholarship I'm vying for and how a big fat F would crater my chances. But I also felt my stubbornness kick in. I told her with all due respect, I'm not changing my paper. The feedback came late. I've submitted what I'm going to submit. My voice was steadier than my insides were. She stared at me, lips pressed so tightly together they were white. Then she said quietly, "Fine. Then you'll accept the consequences. And don't expect any further leniency in this class. or any recommendations from me. Ouch. That last part felt like a punch. Miss Thompson has a lot of sway. She's one of those teachers whose recommendation letter holds weight for colleges, and I'd quietly hoped to ask her at the end of the semester, before all this. Now that bridge was engulfed in flames. Finally, she told me to go, with the dismissive wave of her hand. "We're done here." I walked out, only then realizing my hands were trembling. In the hallway, my friend, the one who'd said good luck, was waiting. She immediately asked what happened, and I gave her the short version. Basically that Miss Thompson threatened to fail me and ruin any recommendation chances, and that I didn't back down. My friend looked equal parts impressed and worried. She admitted she kind of agreed with my point, but was too scared to ever say anything. A few other classmates were hovering nearby and jumped into the conversation, and soon I had a small circle of seniors around me in the hall. Most were supportive, saying things like, "That needed to be said," and "She was totally in the wrong," though one guy did caution, "Dude, she might actually fail you, she's petty." As if I hadn't thought of that. Eventually, we all had to head to our next classes. The rest of the day, my phone buzzed with texts from classmates about what happened. A few were asking if I got suspended or something. I didn't, at least not yet. And others were sending me "You're my hero" memes or dramatic gifs of people clapping. It was equal parts encouraging and anxiety-inducing. At lunch, a small group of us discussed the situation more privately. One friend suggested we all go to the principal together to complain about the late feedback and her policy. A couple were on board, but others nervously backed out, saying they didn't want to make themselves targets. I get it. Challenging a teacher can have consequences, and not everyone is willing to stick their neck out. In the end, we didn't launch any big group rebellion beyond what I'd already done. They all basically said they had my back if I needed support but would otherwise keep their heads down. Fair enough. I kind of felt like I started this, so it's on me to see it through. It's now after school and I'm home, writing this because I'm not sure what's going to happen next. The principal hasn't responded to my email yet either. My mom is backing me. She even laughed a little and said Ms. Thompson kind of had it coming, but she also cautioned that I should be prepared for fallout. She warned me that high school politics can get messy, and that if things get worse, she and other parents would get involved to make sure I'm treated fairly. Part of me wonders if I should have just kept my head down and avoided this fight. But another part of me feels proud for calling out the double standard. That policy always felt unfair. It's just that no one ever dared challenge it until now. I don't know. I might have just put a giant target on my back for the rest of the year. So yeah, that's where things stand. I stood up to a teacher's hypocrisy, and now I might pay a price. Will she actually flunk me out of spite? Will the administration side with her or me? I have no idea. I guess I'll find out soon enough. I'll update when I know more, because I have a feeling this isn't over in the slightest. Update 1. Wow, I did not expect my story to get so much attention. Thank you for all the support and advice. It's been a crazy couple of days. Buckle up, because things did escalate. First off, the day after my confrontation with Ms. Thompson, our final paper grades were posted online, way faster than usual, ironically. I logged into the portal and felt my stomach drop. I saw a giant, glaring 55% next to my paper, a failing grade, and the only comment was something like, "Did not follow instructions, failed to incorporate required feedback." I'm not gonna lie, I started shaking with anger. This felt like outright retaliation. Some of my friends who turned in pretty mediocre papers got B's and C's, so it was clear my work was being judged on a completely different standard. I immediately printed out my paper, the rubric, and the email timestamps showing when feedback was given. I wanted to arm myself with evidence. My mom, upon hearing that I actually got an F, essentially on the paper, switched from proud of you mode to ready to go mama bear mode. We decided that I should try to talk to the principal and guidance counselor first to see if this could be resolved calmly. That morning, I went to the guidance office and politely asked if Principal Stevens, or our senior counselor, the one I CC'd, had a few minutes to discuss an issue with my English grade. They were a bit busy, but the counselor, Mr. Lee, agreed to see me during lunch. I went in and basically laid everything out. The late feedback, my email, the confrontation, and now this grade that could seriously impact my GPA and scholarship chances. Mr. Lee listened attentively and took notes. He actually frowned and said, "I did notice that you CC'd me on that email." To be honest, I was expecting a follow-up from Ms. Thompson or Mr. Stevens about it. Apparently, neither the teacher nor the principal had looped him in after I sent that email. Figures. Mr. Lee said he'd arrange a meeting for me with Principal Stevens and Ms. Thompson as soon as possible to sort this out. I was relieved that at least someone seemed to be taking me seriously. Sure enough, later that afternoon I got a pass to go to the principal's office. Walking into that meeting was nerve-wracking. In the principal's office, Ms. Thompson sat with a stack of papers and an icy glare. The principal, Mr. Stevens, and our counselor, Mr. Lee, were present to mediate. Ms. Thompson immediately defended her actions. She insisted she had provided feedback, albeit general notes, and accused me of overreacting and disrespecting her authority by CCing the administration. I countered that her feedback came 4 days after she promised it, effectively too late for students to use, and that I simply held her to the same standards she holds us to. I also brought up that when I tried to discuss it with her after class, she essentially warned me my grade would suffer, which it now had. Principal Stevens asked for clarification on the timeline. Ms. Thompson admitted the drafts were returned late, but stressed that she had a lot to grade and did her best by giving a generic feedback sheet. I pointed out that if I turned something in late, reasons wouldn't matter. I'd get a 0. There was some tense back and forth. She argued my paper had serious issues that the feedback would have helped fix. I argued that I met all the assignment criteria and was only missing the chance to incorporate feedback that wasn't provided on time. Finally, Principal Stevens intervened. He said it's important for faculty to meet their own deadlines and that this situation was clearly a mess. To resolve the grade dispute, he proposed having an impartial English teacher regrade my paper based on its content and the rubric, without the didn't use feedback penalty. If that evaluation found my paper deserved a higher grade, they would adjust it. In the meantime, the failing grade would be put on hold. Miss Thompson was not happy. I could practically see her clenching her jaw, but she agreed through thin lips. Principal Stevens also gently reminded her, in so many words, that teachers need to uphold their side of commitments to students. He phrased it diplomatically, but I could tell she took it as a rebuke. The meeting ended with that semi-resolution. I left feeling partially relieved. At least an impartial party is going to grade my paper. But also, I was anxious because Miss Thompson was fuming. She wouldn't even look at me as we left the office. I got the vibe that, while the grade issue might be sorted, I've made a permanent enemy of her. Sure enough, the atmosphere in class the next day was ice. She didn't call on me at all, which she usually does, and basically acted like I didn't exist. I guess it's better than being berated, but it felt weird. Some friend said she was probably told by the principal to cool it, so she's doing the cold shoulder thing instead. Whatever, I can live with that. As of now, I'm waiting on the independent grade assessment. The other English teacher, who I'm not supposed to know, but I'm pretty sure it's the 11th grade honors teacher, who is awesome, has my paper. Mr. Lee told me privately that if that teacher's grading comes back significantly higher, they'll adjust my score, and that will be the end of it. If it matches the low grade, I might be out of luck. I'm confident in my work, though. I haven't heard any more yet about possible discipline for me. It seems like the principal is handling this as an academic issue rather than a behavioral one, which is a relief. I was half expecting a detention or something for mouthing off, but so far nothing of the sort has happened. Maybe they recognize that this was more of a grade dispute than a blatant act of insubordination, at least in their eyes. At home, my mom is staying on top of it. She said if the regrade somehow doesn't fix things, she'll take it up the chain. Honestly, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. The thought of more meetings, or worse, legal action or school board drama, makes me feel sick. For now, I'm cautiously optimistic. A lot of you said to stand my ground, and I have. I'm fortunate that some authority figures are listening. But I'm also hyper-aware that I have to survive the rest of the year with this teacher. If looks could kill, I'd be 6 feet under every time I walk into class. I'll update again when I hear back about the regrade or if Miss Thompson pulls anything else. For now, it's a stalemate of sorts. I didn't technically lose, but I definitely haven't won yet either. Update 2. It's been a couple of weeks, and things have been tense, to say the least. But there have been some developments and a few surprises since the last update. First, the good news. The independent regrade of my paper came back, and lo and behold, I got a 90%, an A-. As promised, the principal adjusted my grade in the system. One afternoon, I noticed my English class grade jumped up. Later, Mr. Lee, the counselor, confirmed privately that the other teacher found my paper strong and well argued. So academically, that specific issue is resolved. I won the battle on paper. Pun intended. Now, the not-so-good news. Miss Thompson has been, unsurprisingly, still incredibly bitter. In class, she continues to basically pretend I don't exist. She won't call on me, won't acknowledge my raised hand, nothing. When she returned everyone's graded papers with the adjusted scores, she simply placed mine on my desk without a word or a glance. On the top, in her handwriting, was a terse note, graded by external reviewer, Ms. T. It felt like a final little dig that she wouldn't even personally evaluate my work. I could live with a cold shoulder. Honestly. But then I heard from a friend in her other senior English class that Ms. Thompson has been indirectly referencing me during lessons. Things like, some students would rather complain to the principal than put in the effort, and I hope you all appreciate the feedback I give you on time, unlike certain people. It's all very thinly veiled, but everyone knows she's talking about our situation. This friend said the whole class was whispering about it. Essentially, she's trash-talking me without using my name. When I told my mom about that, she was livid. She actually reached out to a couple of other parents she knows, parents of kids in that other class, to verify the story. Apparently, at least one other student had mentioned to their parents that Ms. Thompson went on a rant about entitled students challenging her during class. That was enough for my mom. She set up a meeting with Principal Stevens and brought this up, emphasizing how unprofessional it was for a teacher to badmouth a student to other students. From what my mom told me, I wasn't in this meeting. Principal Stevens was sympathetic, but a bit hands-tied. He said he would speak to Ms. Thompson about maintaining professionalism. My mom, who does not play around, also submitted a formal complaint email to the school board about the whole ordeal, not just the feedback issue, but the way Ms. Thompson handled it afterward. She CC'd the principal on that email, too. I suspect that put a bit of fire under the administration because I've noticed Ms. Thompson has toned it down, at least where I can see. To be clear, she still isn't friendly, not by a long shot, but she's no longer making snide remarks in our class, and I haven't heard of new comments in her other class either since my mom's intervention. So maybe someone had a come-to-Jesus talk with her about defamation or professionalism or something. One weird outcome. I ended up swapping out of being in the running for a certain student honor. I was supposed to be a candidate for a Student of the Month thing in the English department. I had been nominated before all this. After everything went down, that mysteriously vanished. I didn't get it. Another student did. And while I can't prove anything, I have a feeling Ms. Thompson withdrew my nomination. Kinda sucks, but it's whatever. Small price to pay. I also scrambled to find a different teacher to write my college recommendation letter. I definitely wasn't going to ask Ms. Thompson anymore. Thankfully, my history teacher was happy to do it on short notice. He's known me for years, and I actually filled him in broad strokes on why I needed him to step in. He just shook his head and said, "Good for you for standing up for yourself. Not all teachers are infallible." That felt validating in a way I really needed. As for day-to-day in English class now, it's awkward but manageable. I've basically taken the stance of keep my head down, do my work, and get out.